Oh my gosh. You know, it's funny. I've done hundreds of expired listing phone calls. I've never asked that question the way you just asked it.
Wow. Well, let me be the first to tell you, you definitely deserve better service than that.
Crushed it in high school, just picking up girls. Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me your boyfriend didn't call you and tell you this, that, and the other? He didn't say this. He didn't do that. Oh my gosh. Wow.
How many people besides me have ever been in the presence of somebody that you knew that they wanted something from you? They didn't come out and tell you, but they could feel it.
Oh, bro, it's just seeping out of their pores. I can smell it like cheap cologne.
And this way, whatever you decide to do, Brandy, whether you decide to stay put or you decide to move, you'll have
nobody's named Brandy in Fort Lauderdale. They're all Jim and like Beth.
No, I know there's
bro.
a Brandy here. That's why you get rewarded in public for what you spend countless hours doing in private. If you're serious about this, how many people do you role play with that you're actually intimidated to practice with them? If you learn how to sell, you will be disproportionately rewarded for your efforts.
Aaron wrote that song almost like Adele, right? That script was not something that somebody printed out to him and said, here, memorize this. That's personal development. That's delegation. That's understanding the most valuable activity that you should be doing. 91% of people on the planet will never understand it. 91% of people will always be overwhelmed and never pick up their phone. There's no way this dude is charging me $500 an hour to meet me at a Starbucks location.
We think that we are thinking beings that feel when we are actually feeling beings that think. And keep in mind, these people are being bombarded with, let's say, agents, and now let's say some investors that are reaching out that are looking for something. And if you can connect with people emotionally, I promise you they will stay on the phone longer. 100%. Right? So if they're feeling desperate, they're feeling frustrated, they're feeling scared, the opposite of that is hope and certainty. Hope and certainty. So, hey, do you think I can actually get this done, Pace? Absolutely. It is really not a question to me of whether or not you could or couldn't, right? It's really just a question of me figuring out specifically what you're looking to accomplish and then coming up with a game plan to help you to get what you want and the time you want. I guess I'm curious. Notice that is hope and certainty. Immediately, right out of the gate, right? Somebody is aggressive with you right out of the gate. The way that I like to describe this is imagine if you've ever seen bull riding, okay? So when you're bull riding or you're watching bull riding, for the first 10 seconds, what does the bull do? Buck.
Yeah.
Almost uncontrollably. But then what happens after 10 or 15 seconds?
They calm down.
He stops, right? And initially, when you are making this phone call, initially, they're going to book. How'd you get my phone number? Who are you? Why are you calling me? Like that sort of thing. So my goal and objective is to have them to talk to me. I want you to erase in your mind initially, my goal and objective is to get a deal. No, my goal and objective is to discover if they have a need that I can service. Okay? And how am I going to find that out? If they speak to me. That's the only way I'm going to find it out. So if Pace is really aggressive with me and he's like, oh man, how'd you get my phone number? It's like, listen, what I'm aware of is I can tell by the tone in your voice that it wasn't your expectation this morning that you were going to get bombarded with phone calls. I will be sure to take it off my list. Initially, what are they thinking right away? Okay, we're done here. While I have you on the phone, Pace, I guess I'm curious. Your home's lovely. It's in a great geographic area. Great schools. I don't need to tell you that. If you don't mind me asking, when you had originally put it on the market, was there any particular reason you were even considering selling it? Notice my tonality. That's ridiculous. Why would you ever do that? Which is going to cause them to do what? Speak to me. Pace is going to be like, well, you know, we wanted to do this, this, and that. Okay. And listen, first, I appreciate your willingness to share that with me. The more you're willing to share, the better equipped I am to provide you with information that could be helpful or useful in some way. So I'm wondering, is that still something that's important to you, or have things changed forever? When I say have things changed forever, what am I doing? I'm slamming the door shut on that opportunity.
That's so good. Such a great line.
Either a definite yes or a definite no. They're either going to say, well, no, like not like forever. Okay, so it sounds like it's something that's still important to you. It's just that you're not specifically clear as to how come it didn't sell or what you need to change to ensure that it does. I guess I'm wondering, how did you happen to pick the agent that you hired to help?
Oh my gosh. You know, it's funny. I've done hundreds of expired listing phone calls. I've never asked that question the way you just asked it.
And what happens, Pace, when you do that, check this out. What am I insinuating is the reason it didn't sell? The agent. Did I come out and say that directly?
No.
No. My tonality infers it. So if you don't mind me asking, I mean, gosh, your home's lovely. I guess I'm a little bit confused. Did the previous agent give you any clear, specific reasons as to how come it didn't sell? And they'll be like, well, they blame the market, or they said interest rates are too high. Really? How interesting. I oftentimes notice, Pace, that when homes aren't selling like that, oftentimes what agents will do is they'll blame the market, they'll blame interest rates, things of that nature. I'm wondering, though, you strike me to be someone who has a lot of common sense. You seem to understand this process pretty well. What do you feel like they should have been doing so you could do something simple, which is just get it sold and make the move to Kansas? Be quiet. Now, what are they going to complain about?
The agent and all the problems.
And all the reasons why they sucked and all the reasons why. And you're like, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Let me but wait. So let's say they start to tell me, they're like, well, they didn't call me. They didn't give me updates. I will interrupt them. Robin, wait a minute. Time out. You mean to tell me they weren't calling you every week with a specific update, letting you know how come it's not selling and what you need to change to ensure that it does? No. Wow. Well, let me be the first to tell you, you definitely deserve better service than that.
What's interesting? I had a buddy that crushed it in high school, just picking up girls, and his lines sounded very similar to this.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me your boyfriend didn't call you and tell you this, that, and the other? He didn't say this. He didn't do that. Oh my gosh. Wow. Guys, half of you guys have been doing this your whole life. In fact, you probably landed your wife this way.
That's right.
God, bro, this is money. Keep going. I don't want to interrupt. I'm just in the peanut gallery, just enjoying this.
Yeah, it's literally money. It's literally a license to print money if you can learn how to do it effectively and efficiently. So, yeah, and then let's say they're like, well, I felt like they should have done this, this, and this. Yeah, I agree with you, right? And what do you feel like they should have been doing? They're like, well, I feel like they should have been more aggressive and more proactive. Yeah, 100%. So let me ask it this way, because my job is to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Time out. Most people are so overly attached to an outcome that they have commission breath or assignment breath, or, you know what I'm saying? It leaks out in your tonality, in your choice of words, in the rate of speech, like all of that, and it becomes repulsive. How many people besides me have ever been in the presence of somebody that you knew that they wanted something from you? They didn't come out and tell you, but they could feel it.
Oh, bro, it's just seeping out of their pores. I can smell it like cheap cologne.
All right. And what's so fascinating, I want everybody on this call to recognize something, okay? We all speak another language. We just don't talk about it. Communication is only 8% of the words that are coming out of my mouth. It's 50% like body language, 18% tonality, right? It's a small fraction. So when people come to me, they're like, hey, I want to learn what to say and how to say it. I'm like, I can teach you that. But there's this other language that we have to learn. And when I say to you, like, listen, my job's to help you, Pace. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Immediately, what am I demonstrating? I am completely unattached to this outcome. Whatever you decide to do is fine. Right? Versus what other people are doing, like, oh, please, 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 let's meet. Let's meet. Let's meet. Let's do a deal. Let's meet. Right? So you'll totally stand out by doing that. And so my job's to help you. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Let me ask it this way. If you had an offer that was very reasonable, very acceptable to you, in the next maybe 30, 60, 90 days that would allow you to still make this move to Texas happen, do you think you would still sell the home? Be quiet. You'd be like, well, yeah, I probably would. Great. Well, just by you saying that demonstrates that we should get together and discuss the options. That's neuro-linguistic programming. Just by you saying that demonstrates that we should get together and discuss the options. May I make a suggestion? Be quiet. When I ask, may I make a suggestion, what am I asking permission to do? Who can tell me? I'm asking permission to close. You be quiet, and it might take 20, 30 seconds, and it seems like a lifetime. You're just quiet, sitting there. And then you know what they'll say to you? I'm listening. Or they'll be like, go ahead, Pace. Or they'll be like, you can make a suggestion, but I don't know if I'll do it. Right? You just have to shut up long enough for them to say it. Now they're giving you permission to proceed. Right? They say, well, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, make a suggestion. Well, based on what you've been kind enough to share with me, I'm hearing a couple things very clearly. The first one is you still want to make the move to Texas happen. The second thing I'm hearing from you is really through no fault of your own, because you weren't getting great service. You are not specifically clear as to why it didn't sell and what changes we could make in terms of approach, perhaps creative financing that would allow you to accomplish your goals and objectives. So what I'd like to do is this, and I really wouldn't mind because I'm in your area all the time anyway. I'd love to have the opportunity just to pop by. Notice, how long does pop by sound like?
2 seconds.
2 seconds, bro. Just pop by, take a quick peek. Notice, quick peek. See what it has to offer in person. And what I can do is I can show you a couple things very clearly. Number one, how come it didn't sell? Number two, what we need to change in terms of a more proactive and aggressive approach, including creative financing, that can help you to accomplish your goals and objectives. I could show you a net sheet with the proceeds will be to you and your family. You could take with you to Texas. And this way, whatever you decide to do, Brandy, whether you decide to stay put or you decide to move, you'll have
nobody's named Brandy in Fort Lauderdale. They're all Jim and like Beth.
No, I know there's
bro.
a Brandy here. That's why. That's
okay.
Why. So, whatever you decide to do, you'll have all of the information that you need so you can make the decision that you feel is best for you and your family. Notice how many U's are in there. How many I's? 0. Most people are so egotistical, like, well, don't you know who I am? I don't know if you know, but I did all of these. Guys, can you imagine if you went to the donut shop and you asked for a donut? They're like, I don't know if you're aware of this, Brady. I am the biggest donut maker in town. I am such a big deal. You'd be like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I asked for a donut. Like, I really don't care. So we have this tendency to lead with authority. Do you know why we lead with authority? Because of insecurity. That's why. That's 100% the reason why. So instead, if you put all of your focus on the client, right? And I just gave you something that's very easy to say yes to. I could show you these couple of things. Does that sound reasonable? Does that sound fair to you? And they might, then from there may be objections. Well, I need to speak to my wife first or whatever. Okay. Well, look, I want you to speak to your wife because it's a big decision. You want to make sure you make the best decision possible. I guess I'm curious. I mean, when you had it on the market in terms of this move, I can hear in your voice that you still want to make this happen. How does she feel about it? Oh, yeah, she's still pumped. She's the reason we put it on the market. Interesting. So if she knew that there was somebody who could shed some light on the situation, show you clearly and specifically what you would need to do in order to make it happen, I have to imagine she would want to speak to them, wouldn't she? Notice it's programmed into me. No, you see what I did when I said that? She would want to speak to them, wouldn't she? And it comes out of my tonality.
For just a second. Couple of comments in the side comments, right? There's a point where I've made thousands and thousands and thousands of seller calls for creative finance deals. And people come to me and they go, dude, nobody's better on seller calls about creative finance. And I go, yeah, it didn't start that way. You get to a point where you own the information so much. Like Aaron owns this information, guys. He owns it because he's practiced this so many times. And you guys are over here saying, man, Aaron just lets this flow like butter. Guys, he's practiced this like a gangster over and over and over. Aaron, have you ever stuttered? Have you ever screwed up? Have you ever made a blunder in a point where you're like, crap, I screwed up. You go home, you make a note, and then you go back and you try it again.
Yeah. So here's what I would suggest to anybody who's saying that. The first thing is you get rewarded in public for what you spend countless hours doing in private. Countless. Somebody say they DM me. They're like, wow, man, that sounds real dope. I'm like, yeah, you know what it takes? Nauseating, disgusting amounts of practice.
Yeah.
That most people aren't willing to do. So the first calendar year selling real estate, guys, I made $13,000. I'm curious. Do you think Pace would bring me on his group to share with you guys precisely how I made below the poverty line?
No.
Nobody was there hanging out with me while I'm standing in my crops chanting, hi, I was calling about the home that's for sale by industries. This is the owner. Great. My name's Aaron, I'm a local real estate agent. Sure, figured out by now. Like nobody was there doing that. Nobody was there while I was hand writing out scripts by hand. Nobody was there when I was filming myself. You want to do something really fun? Do this. You ready? Film yourself talking to somebody. Sit down with your significant other with a bottle of wine and they'll be like, this is going to be entertaining. Okay? Because I'm probably going to verbally vomit. You're like, what the hell was I doing? Like, what was I saying? That's how you get better. Then you know what I did? I got proximity to agents. I was doing 50 deals a year. I started role playing with a guy doing 200. How many, let me ask you guys a question. If you're serious about this, how many people do you role play with that you're actually intimidated to practice with them?
We have 4 hours of role playing every morning in this community with people that are like doing 200 deals a year. And it is something we force them into because I believe in that more than anything else. But still, even though we call it the daily dial. So we have 2 hours East Coast, 2 hours West Coast. Okay. And even though it's there, people are so intimidated. Here's one of our best closers, Aaron. This is a great story. His name is Munif. He comes in, joins our community, and he joins the daily dial, just one of 31 Zooms we do every single week. And he's picking up a fake phone call with somebody that he's role-playing with who's a fake seller. And the person who he's role-playing with is doing 200 deals a year, right? Munif picks up a fake phone call, his first daily dial, and hangs up the fake phone call because he's so damn scared. He then goes on, doesn't give up, keeps doing the role playing, shows up every single day, and 6 months later, he wins our entire industry's Closers Olympics. Wins the belt. Quits his job as an engineer. An engineer by trade became a great closer.
Often copied, but never duplicated. What's up, team? I got with me Mr. John Mikish, 2,300?
2,300, yeah.
2,300
Yesterday
agents.
We hit 2,300.
In the organization with the XP. I've been with the XP going on 20 months, 274 agents in the organization, trying to be like...
That's amazing growth though, dude, in your time.
Trying to be like this guy when I grow up. We have conversations regularly because teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
And collaboration is the new currency. And we have conversations regularly with agents. A lot of these agents are highly productive. They're looking to have conversations and potentially make a change from a traditional firm, or one that is a traditional firm that pretends that they're not. Right? So we were talking off camera about how amazing it is that most agents don't read ICAs. They don't actually...
Yeah. Well, did you read your last update to your iPhone agreement? Like it comes through, you just like click, click, click.
Oh, that's true, dude.
We don't ever read that stuff.
Yeah. And in reading it though, you can really get a clear understanding of what that brokerage firm's business model is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I would even say this, what their future intentions are for that business. Because, I'll talk to real agents a lot, right? And they don't even know what they can't do. Their independent contractor agreement says that they can't offer out any free leads, any free coaching, any type of additional support, anything to encourage an agent to maybe sign up with that company and name them as their sponsor. Their independent contractor agreement literally says they can't do it. They can't throw events, they can't do lunch and learns, they can't do anything. Now, we know a lot of agents are doing those things, but my question to them is, what happens when they enforce it?
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to risk everything you're gonna build so that one day they say, hey, you've been in violation of this all along, now we're taking that away from you?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting that it's in the agreement and other people are doing it, but they're just like, okay, why? Because that's what you have to do in order to, to really attract and add value. And I think it also is handicapping an agent from being entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And adding value. Because my experience in this game is it's relationships plus value over time.
Yeah, I think, when people come in second and they're like, I'm gonna copy this but make it quote unquote better.
Yeah.
What they typically do is they'll look at the landscape and they'll find where are the complainers, where are people disgruntled, like what is that? And one of the things that they'll say about EXP sometimes is that it's siloed, like that's the word that they use. He's like, well, there's all these big organizations in the company and everybody's competing for the agents. And to one extent that's true, but I don't really find it to be a problem. Like when I worked at Remax for 5 years, we were a very high producing Remax. We had top agents in our market, on many different levels. And I would find that most of the time when I was competing for a listing, I was competing against another Remax agent. We were the best brokerage in town. So to me, it was just like part of the deal. Like I have to sell myself at the end of the day. The company that I'm with is the opportunity that I'm running my business on. But whether that's me selling real estate at Remax or me building rev share at EXP, like at the end of the day, like I'm selling me.
Yeah.
And if I can't sell me, what am I selling?
Yeah.
All I can sell is the company then. And so, I'll use Real as an example. I think that there's a lot of things that they are claiming to be that are either in direct conflict to what their independent contractor says they actually are, or it's just not true. And they're saying, well, we know that some EXP agents were mad that this didn't work out perfectly for them. And that's going to happen in any business, especially when growing as fast as ours. But I just, when we look at who innovated this space, Glenn Sanford innovated it. He changed it, right? It's never going to be the same. Yeah. Real's going to come along. There's going to be countless other companies like them that are going after a revenue share, profit sharing model, if you will. And really we could say, hey, Glenn innovated it through revenue share, but he really took it out of a page of the playbook that was Keller Williams with profit share. He just got into profit share and realized it didn't make any sense. Yeah. He had 1,800 people and nobody was making money.
And recognized that rev share exists in that model. It just goes to a very, very, very small group of individuals.
That's correct.
That's really what's true. And to your point, you know, I had this awareness hearing Glenn today speak that he's the one that actually innovated.
Yep.
He's the one that created something new. So these other models that are coming behind it are copycats.
Yes.
No matter what they say.
Yep.
And what they're doing is tinkering with perhaps like some numbers and put a different color and flag on it and say, oh, this is new.
Yeah.
When in fact it's not new at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, one of my favorite things that I get if I'm like out there and, you know, I'm talking to somebody and they're like, well, I heard Real was good and, you know, I'm looking at EXP, but they've been around for a while. And they're like, I'm going to go with Real because they're like the new thing and I'm going to have an opportunity similar to what the opportunity was with EXP. And I just find that hilarious because here's the deal. If you've ever read the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, it's all about this concept of a new business model is outside of the box of the norm and it's a blue ocean, like it's, you know, plentiful feeding and it's just clear blue water. But then what happens is when somebody sees that they're having success over there, they all want a piece of that pie too. And that's what we're seeing in our industry now. People like Real, people like Epic, LPT, these new companies are coming in, basically copying our model, saying that they're gonna do what we did. But how does that make sense when we did what we did in a blue ocean and it's now a red ocean? Meaning you now will never have that blue ocean space again because we've changed the model. And until somebody changes the model again, somehow, some way, we're in a red ocean now.
That's right.
So if you think you're gonna step into this competitive market space where you have companies like EXP that dominate, that are super profitable, and you're gonna have the same trajectory inside of that red ocean, you're very misguided.
It's an unrealistic expectation.
Very unrealistic.
And I think what they're being sold is this idea that like the product is what's going to cause that to happen. It's like, well, wait a minute. The product is a copycat of another product. It's like coming out with another kind of flavor of Coke or something.
Right.
Like you tinkered with the recipe. It's like, oh, we're great. We're going to be just as big as Coke. It's like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And I also hear, it's because it seems like a talking point. Like one was the silo. The other talking point I hear is like, well, it's oversaturated.
Yeah.
And to that, I'm like, well, okay, I appreciate that. At the same time, I've been with the company for 20 months. And currently our organization sits at 274 agents. Like, is it oversaturated? There are people in my market that have like 1,000 agents, 2,000 agents.
Yeah.
And we're still growing and building.
Yeah, and it's global, you know, so there's countries that we're just going into now that we literally just opened. So ground floor, huge opportunity, and we're getting like our first couple hundred agents there, and there's room to go to 100,000 very conservatively in that country.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about Brazil and New Zealand and Spain, like these countries have enormous opportunity and we just got there. So, you know, we're going to 100 countries, we're going to 1 million agents worldwide, we're at 90,000. We're still very much as an industry at the left side of that bell curve.
Yes.
Because, you know, hey, there's room for everybody. Like I believe that other companies can be successful in this space. It's just then it gets into like brass tacks of like, where are you most likely to be the most successful?
Correct.
and have the greatest opportunity. And when we start laying out the different bullet points of EXP and what they offer, I don't think anybody comes close.
Yeah.
We pay out on 7 levels. A lot of copycat companies are only paying out on 5. Mm-hmm. We pay more. Mm-hmm. You know, when we look at these other copycat companies and we're like, well, what are you guys making over there? And we see like, oh, the number one person in that company, in their model, in revenue share, makes less than some of my people in my organization make in a month, in a year.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What's your opportunity? So I think these are all important things that we have to consider. And I would just say this, what are you gonna build? Because at the end of the day, these companies are platforms now. That's what they are.
Yeah.
And you can stand alone and the platform can be your whole opportunity and it can be your whole front and center. But I would argue that you should be branding and building you.
100%.
And our company supports that not only from an infrastructure side, but they actually encourage it.
Yeah, support and encourage. And I think the false misperception is people imagining that a product will do all of that for you. And it's not what's accurate because the model's the model, right?
That's
so,
right.
So Instagram is a platform, YouTube is a platform, TikTok is a platform. And people imagine because they sell them like a product,
Yep.
yo, you're gonna blow up. But the truth is like, you have to be talented, you have to add a lot of value, you have to put time, energy, effort, and resources, you have to take risk, right? Like that's what's gonna actually cause that to compound and multiply.
Right. I mean, it's a leadership opportunity at the end of the day. And, you know, I think that's why a lot of us who are leading brokerages, like an independent like I had, or you were leading teams, you know, like you were leading before you came to EXP, we're just transferring that leadership to a new opportunity with much more greater rewards. So I love it. I feel firmly that we have the proven leadership. No other company in our space has proven leadership yet. And there's a big difference between growing from, you know, 0 to 10,000 versus 10,000 to 20,000 versus 20,000 to 50,000. Like those periods of great growth also come with a great cost. Like the cost of scaling at those different points is difficult. Most companies don't make it. We've not only gotten through it, but through it all, our leadership has always made the right decisions for us and to protect our opportunity. And to me, that carries a lot of weight. Are there agents that are at any company that maybe are less than desirable? Absolutely. There's people in the real estate industry that are less than desirable, but that doesn't mean that I get out of the industry. So we can't use some of these things that they say as excuses. We, at the end of the day, need to show up and say, what did I do? What did I build? And how am I going to see a vision for myself and my people in the future? And we need to lead them into that.
Yeah, I love that. It really is about leadership and duplication. So I think that you're one of the most learned on models. You understand them very well. You study them. So maybe what we could do for the agents or whoever's watching is just talk very specifically brass tacks of differences. Because I find it incredibly frustrating when agents come on a call and they're like, oh, like this is the same. And I'm like, nah, dude, it's not. So let's take on a case-by-case basis, because I know the comp plan is drastically different.
So one of the biggest things about the comp plan that's a little bit harder to quantify and reconcile with on the front end is that we get paid out on 7 levels and Real gets paid out on 5 levels.
And explain why that's such a huge difference. I understand it. But.
So, you know, in the beginning, you're not going to have people on your 6th and 7th level. But as it grows, as it builds, you're going to have a lot of people on those lower levels. In a mature organization with proper compounding, those are going to be the biggest levels you have. Case in point, above me, so I'm part of somebody's 7 levels, right? Above me, I have the top 6 people in the world for EXP, okay? When you talk to those 6 people, across the board, 80% of the income that they make today comes from their levels 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Now, let's just rewind the tape a minute. Let's say they had built at a competitor's company and they had 5 levels. And let's just say, for simple math, let's just say that one opportunity with 7 levels pays $1 million a year. But 80% of that income is coming from levels 6 and 7. That means if you went to the company that had 5 levels, instead of making $1 million, you'd make 200,000.
It's wild. And I think what is important for people to understand is the reason why the 6th and the 7th are the biggest is because of compounding.
Correct.
Because I know what Real has said is like, well, what we're going to do is you'll make more money on the first couple levels.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the way I described it to somebody recently, I'm like, it's like a magic trick. It's like, hey, don't pay attention to the 6th and 7th. You know what I'm saying?
No, they want to distract you from that.
And what I'm aware of is that those first 2, particularly the first, is dependent on your personal efforts.
Yes.
And I mean, I've been coming to these events now for 2 years, and it is exceptionally rare to find somebody that has personally attracted 50 to 100 agents.
Totally.
It's very, very
handful
rare.
of people in the whole company.
Like a handful of people in the whole company. So what
I'm actually proud of the opposite of that. When I show people kind of like what my journey's been here at EXP, I'm like, hey, you know, you're a top producer, you're a top team leader, you run an amazing brokerage. This is kind of what it's like, is everything in your life is dependent on your effort. But at EXP, it's not.
Right.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing. When I look at my organization today, over 2,300 people, my personal efforts, the people that I recruited, represent 1.7% of what I get paid on today.
Which is so important in terms of comp plan and models.
Yes.
So that's what's important that I wanted to bring up. So if there's an agent out there who's listening to this and considering different models, if rev share is part of your plan,
yes,
if it's part of your retirement process, if it's part of getting you off the transaction treadmill, then this is very, very important.
Yeah, and this is like one of 10
piece.
key points.
Yeah.
I think though, what I'll get sometimes is like revenue share is not that important to me.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've heard come up lately is like our competitors are trying to get the focus off of revenue share because they know our model's superior.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we're like one big happy family over here. And it's like, we are too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that I wouldn't do. I've flown across the country to events for you and whatnot. We are too. And some of our organizations are bigger than these other entire companies.
Yes.
So siloed or not, like we're all there for each other and we're all there to help each other. But it really matters that like you start to think through revenue share because, you know, the reason that these companies exist, the reason that we're all here today is because we've done it the way without revenue share. We got burnt out. We were on the hamster wheel. You know, we were tired of just spending money to make money constantly and recruiting people to have them leave. So it's like, I would say that if you're not interested in rev share, it's because somebody hasn't properly articulated it to you.
Yes.
Because everybody should want this.
Yes, and what I'm aware of is the difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking.
Yep.
So the vast majority of agents in the business are just trying to make money to pay bills.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're very myopic in the sense of like, hey, I need listings now, I need deals now, versus like this long game, which is a long game that takes time to build.
Yes.
But in the end, I want to play long games with long people.
Yes.
Because most people aren't willing to play them. And the payoff is much, much bigger.
Totally.
So if rev share is important, again, this is a key distinction. Another key distinction I'm aware of is that with EXP, you receive rev share on all lines, won't be the full amount.
Correct.
Independent of the amount of frontline qualifying agents that you have.
And independent of the amount of homes you sell.
Right. Where in other models, you have to be in production.
You have to sell houses.
You have to sell, and they'll be like, well, you don't have to sell that many. I'm like, okay, but you still have to sell some.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally sold a house since 2015, so that's really important to me. Like, if I had to jump back into physically selling houses again, I don't know that I would be here.
No, and I think it also, the other thing that it does is it hinders leadership.
Yeah.
Because I think the reason why agents perhaps don't grow as quick as they can or as fast as they could or as large as they could is because they are still focused on selling real estate in high volume.
Yes.
Where this model allows you, it allows me, I haven't sold a piece of real estate in 14 months.
Nice.
And it allows us to focus
And wait,
on...
let's clarify that. There's nothing wrong with selling houses. Selling houses like made a ton of money and changed my life for my family and me.
Me too.
But at some point, if your goal is to get off of that path, here's a way to do it.
Here's a way to do it. Yeah. So, and it was very important to me too in terms of like model that I don't have to physically sell real estate in order to keep participating. And I will receive rev share on all lines.
Yes.
Independent of the amount of frontline qualifying agents I bring in. Where at other models like Real, that's not the case, man.
That's right.
If you don't have the appropriate frontline qualifying agents, guess what? You get zero rev share on subsequent lines.
That's right.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, zero. I know. Yeah, like I originally got out of selling real estate myself because I wanted to provide the best atmosphere for a team. And the way I looked at it was every time I do a deal, I'm stealing that opportunity or 50-50 of that opportunity from a team member that I could be using that to help coach, train, and support. So my initial motivation to get out of production was that I wanted to help my team. It's really no different now. Now I'm out of production so that I can support my organization and their growth and really lead them to the next level for them.
Yeah, and the quote that I never really understood until participating in this model is that when the player's the coach, the accountability is weak.
Yeah, that's a good one.
If I'm still on the field,
when the player's the coach, the accountability is weak.
I can't really
Yeah.
serve them as a leader, as a coach, as a mentor, right?
So
because
good.
my mind is still focused elsewhere. So these are some critical differences as far as comp plans and stuff. Now, the other thing I think is really interesting is when agents tell me, they're like, oh yeah, but like I get stock and stuff. I'm like, okay, but I need you to understand, all stock is not equal.
Correct.
Right? So we are an S&P 600 company. You cannot buy your way in. You can't politic your way in. That's an index.
Yes.
Right? You either fit the financial criteria or you don't. We have $100-something million in the bank, debt-free, and our stock pays a dividend.
Yes.
That is not the same as a startup that's not profitable.
Right. That's classified as a technology company when they're really not.
Right. Like, I mean, but is that frustrating to you when people say that? Because it's like this clear misunderstanding.
It's just really good too. And I think the path is in the math, right? So when we look at Real as an example, there's a reason that they don't pay out level 6 and 7. They funded the company with outside investors, and the outside investors understood our model.
Yes.
And they said, we'll keep level 6 and 7. You guys play with 1 through 5. Because at the end of the day, as they grow the company, the investors are going to win.
They get the windfall.
They get the windfall. They get that 80% I talked about earlier. Everybody else gets the 20.
Yeah, so the way I really perceive it is that it's actually no different than traditional models, where a small portion of the people get a vast majority of the money.
It's a little better, we'll give them that, but it's definitely not, like if you're going to do something, I feel like you make this move, you give it 5 or 10 years, the compound effect of that here versus elsewhere is so financially drastic.
Yeah.
Like, I just want people to slow down, put their emotions aside for a second, and let's look at the two models and make a business decision.
Correct.
If you look at the two models line by line, you look at the independent contractor agreement, and you decide, I'm going to real, if that's your business decision, go ahead. I just believe that when you show the people the evidence and the information, they can't make that business decision.
Yeah, because it's not based on sound financial business.
Yeah, when you line it up apples to apples, it just doesn't compare.
Right.
And it becomes a very clear picture. And then it's just like, all right, let's go to work. Let's build this for you. Let's help you experience it. We have so much leadership here. We have so many influencers already here. Like, we just have a quality and a core competency to our leadership team that I think is unmatched in the industry of any company, of any model.
Well, and I can attest to that, where, Lars went from being a guy that, like, I was in his coaching program, never talked to him before.
Yeah.
And now I speak to him on a regular basis. Or you, like, we didn't really know each other at all.
Exactly.
And now we're, like, connected. We're hopping on calls with each other. We're helping each other. And in a very short period of time, it has radically changed my life. I think in a very short period of your time, it has radically changed your life.
Totally changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an understatement. It's why we tell people, like, we're here in Cabo right now. It's beautiful. We're going to go outside to the pool here in a little bit. But when you see person after person come all across the stage of every different background, and that message is resoundingly clear and shared among all the people, that's why we say you come to these events and it goes from your head to your heart. And you really start to understand what the heartbeat of this company is. And really what Glenn Sanford is still on a mission to do is like, hey, he created the model and we took the hill. But now we're going to maintain the hill and we're going to go to 1 million agents. And his focus right now and the way he's reinvesting those profits back into tech and tools for us agents, I mean, it's unbelievable. I've been with the company 3.5 years. I've never seen him pour more into the agent that's out there trying to sell their next home than like they're doing right now.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think just purely from a business, economics, like mathematical perspective, when I hear Glenn say like, hey, in 10 years, 50% of all agents will be with cloud-based brokerages, I know that's true.
Yeah.
Because I'm on calls with brokers that have thousands of agents and their profit margin's 5%. Mm-hmm. And the two biggest expenses are staff and space. And we got rid of them.
Yep. There's going to be a lot of consolidation over the next few years.
Right?
So it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, bro.
I'm
well, listen, dude, I'm pumped for you. Getting to 2,300, like you're jumping like 100 a month now. And I'm just proud to be in partnership with you, man.
Awesome, man.
Appreciate you.
Here with Leo Perea. It's awesome to meet you, man. We did a Zoom podcast, and we decided, hey, we're right down the street from each other.
We realized we're 1 county away.
I know, we're just neighbors, man. So it's awesome to be here with you.
That's actually one of the coolest things about our company. It's completely virtual, and when I talk to people, they're always like, I'll feel disconnected. And I actually tell people that I think the human connection that we experience because we're virtual is even better.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's always intentional.
Correct.
It's not like I ran into you at the copier. It's like I made a decision to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Whether it's at an event or one-on-one like we're doing right now. The virtual thing to me is saving on fixed overhead, but then the human connection part is even better in person.
Yeah, and because the way that the company is structured, our interests are in complete alignment. So what I'm doing is I'm meeting with another owner.
I actually talk about that a lot. I had never really understood multi-level marketing or direct selling. Mm-hmm. And now I get to run the 3rd largest direct selling company in the world.
Yeah.
Right. That was news to me when I got here. And I went to a direct selling event and found out, I was like, oh, wow, it's like Amway and a couple others and us.
Yeah.
And actually the way that I normally need parallels in my brain to just put stuff in buckets.
Sure.
And for me, our revenue share model is a newer asset-light aligned version of franchising was 10, 20 years ago.
100%.
Right? I owned a franchise. I was a small member of the cap table. But what I've learned and experienced is that's actually a confrontational, frictionful experience.
Yes.
Because, I owe them fees and they sell me stuff. They make me go to stuff. They make me sign up for stuff. And they get paid off the top.
Yep.
And then I'm left over to make ends meet. And it's always like a give and pull.
Well, and what you're describing is the principal and agent problem. So if somebody went to business school or whatever, an MBA, what they teach you is that principals and agents are at odds with each other. So principals in a company, they want something. They want to keep as much money as possible. The agents or the employees want the opposite. They want to keep as much possible. And what they say is whoever solves for that principal and agent problem the best wins. And when I was looking at these models, because I used to own part of a franchise, I sold it back in order to participate in this opportunity. I felt the exact same thing that you did, that there was friction. And it was very clear that even though it was a little better, it was still hierarchical. One person got the lion's share of everything, everybody else gets crumbs. And what I realized in studying this model is that this solves for the principal and agent problem the best. It's not perfect, but it's the best. Where now my interests are direct in alignment with the company. I get to become an owner through equity. You'll never get rich trading time for money. You must own equity. I get to share in the revenue that the company produces. And what's wild is I know this is to be true, and this has nothing to do with you. I did a leadership retreat this year where we took leaders in our organization to the Dominican Republic. You had no idea I did that.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine. This becomes, in hierarchical models, what you end up with is weak leadership. Because if you want an A+ opportunity, or A+ talent, you need an A+ opportunity. So because it's hierarchical, what ends up happening, and me and you are an example of that, when A+ talent rises to the top and there's no more opportunity, what do?
They leave.
They leave. What this model does is it becomes a super highway for leaders, where it basically is saying, hey, here's a platform. You can do whatever you want with it. You could build as big of an empire as you would like. We are just the platform, the operating system underneath.
Well, I'm sure you've heard me say it. That's actually how I describe the company,
Yeah.
right? We are an operating platform that allows real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm a well-known data nerd.
Yeah.
And so when I first got here, my obsession was just understanding who we are and what our population is. Right. So some fun facts that you can share is 29% of our agents have one or more people in their downline.
Wow.
Which was higher than I expected it. But then I clicked a second number down and I was really curious about 3 or more. Because to me, 1 could be an accident. 1 to 2 is an accident. 3, it feels like you're trying.
Yeah.
And when you go down to 3, it's only 14%. And so, again, that's not good or bad. That's just is, right? So one thing it told me is 86% of the people here just to sell homes, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so, I've never forgotten that we're a real estate brokerage.
First.
So my obsession in the 2 years I've been here is operational excellence. How do I pay you faster?
Yeah.
How do I answer your broker support questions faster? How do I close the loop on any issues, right? And to me, it's let me start with the super important, not sexy, and make that experience amazing. Because unlike other opportunities for folks like you actually are completely relying on the lion's share of the experience on us.
Correct.
Right? You could be the best attractor in the world and create the biggest opportunity. But if onboarding sucks, or broker support sucks, or it takes 2 weeks to pay somebody, who's staying?
Yeah, so what I think is huge about what you just said is I am very clear, EXP is my operational partner, right? So you guys operate. My job is to bring people to the opportunity and then to add tremendous value, right? Your job and the team's job at EXP is to make the operation excellent. And together, because we're all owners, we're all building something together.
The other thought that you just reminded me of when you were saying about your leadership retreat, I asked Glenn a ton of questions when I got here, and just I always like to understand the legacy, because there are things that are put in place for a good reason, especially when you have smart people, right? If I see a system or a rule where I'm hey, before I go touch anything, let me ask a bunch of questions. But one day I was asking him the differences in models where in other systems there's a leader, and the people who help attract just kind of bring them to the doorstep, if you will, and let the other people do the work.
Yeah.
And he's this is the distinction. that person takes them all the way to the finish line.
Right.
And the way he explained EXP in his original vision, and what definitely came out of it, is we're an experiment in distributed leadership.
And explain to me what you mean by that, because I think I'm clear, but
yeah, no. So in most systems, like if in tradition, I know any real estate company, any food company that has franchises, right? Like there's typically a master regional owner.
Yep.
Country owner, right? You sell Europe, Asia, Latin America, the Midwest, the Northeast, the Southeast. And so there's this person who kind of drops in and evangelizes, and then that person then sells the franchises. And so they get to participate in the total upside. And then there are folks who become super kind of franchise owners, regional owners of like 5 or 6 or 7 stores. And again, this could literally be McDonald's, real estate companies, to, and fill in the blank, any franchise shop, Subways. And then some people end up with 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so the revenue opportunity could be, enough to provide for one person's lifestyle.
Sure.
To a multi tens of millions of dollars operation with staff.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm talking about Burger King to real estate offices. So what I see that was created here is someone can kind of tiptoe in and say, hey, is this for me? And do a little bit of it and add 20 grand a year to it, like where your cap's covered and you're basically a 100% company, to, 6 and 7 figures a month in revenue.
Correct.
And at that point, you're basically a multi-regional owner.
Yes.
Right?
Without
or
any
multi-office owner.
Without any expenses, major expenses, leases.
I was going to say, the big difference is without a 10 or 12 year franchise agreement.
Yes.
Without a 10-year lease on 20,000 square feet.
Correct.
Right? Because what I always want to be clear about is the folks who do really well then treat it like a business, right? That's why the platform statement, like those are very specific, like 9 words that I've crafted together, because I want to be a platform, and I'm hyper aware that like 68, 70% of our agents are solo producers and will sell 5 to 12 homes a year.
Great.
And I want to be the very best platform for them to do that.
Yep.
Then we have other folks on the extreme side of the production fence. Like our number 1 team this year is probably going to do 1,200 units with 65 people, right? And we'll probably have 1 in the US and 1 in Canada that do 1,200. Like Justin Haver and Matt Delhoon. Kenny Fast team and Kyle Whistle will be right behind them. In the US, you will see Parker Pemberton's coming up right behind them. But Jennifer Jones and everybody else will give Justin equal run for their money in Canada.
Sure.
So we have folks that are running $10 to $20 million GCI businesses. Like that's bigger than most brokerages ever get to.
Yeah, sure.
And so we need to be able to support people closing 80, 100, 150 transactions a month, right?
Yeah.
There's entire franchises in real estate that don't do that. And we just have them. We have multiple teams in certain cities that have that kind of production.
Yeah.
So our platform has to be scalable and have to have the support and inputs to support those level of businesses.
That's super interesting. So this conversation is helpful because it's helping me to have some clarity, which is one, the platform, to your point, needs to be operational excellence for the agents doing lots of units all across the spectrum, whether it's 2 to 5, 10, or thousands. What it also is doing is an experiment in distributed leadership. So the people who focus on the opportunity of, let's say, attraction, they realize this is a regional opportunity without franchise agreements, without,
It's a global opportunity.
It's a global opportunity.
We have very successful attractors who are just dominant in their physical geography.
Yeah.
And then we've had folks who cross all kinds of lines.
Right. So like right now, I've been with the company 26 months. We're in 15 states. So I was on a call with someone who was trying to present me with what he thought was a good opportunity. He's like, yeah, you'd have to sign this 10-year thing. I'm like, you realize I have the same opportunity. I have to sign anything. And I could do it anywhere, not just this little region in California. So the company is really doing 2 things. One is that operational excellence for the agents and units and volume and all that. And then operational excellence with distributed leadership, which are the agents that see the opportunity in terms of attraction. It lines within their skill sets and they go aggressively after it. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's where the platform statement stands, right? Like you can be a solo producer, you could be a small team, you could be a mega team.
Yeah.
You could attract I was on a call 2 days ago with an agent who's a solo producer, $45 million, solid producer, right? And he had me on an attraction call with a very big team. And I asked him, I said, what do you make a month? And he said, 10 grand, but I spend 5 hours a week on it, right? So it's not his focus. He considers production his focus.
Yeah.
And again, 5 hours may sound low, but that's still 1 hour a day, right? It's still a pillar. But when you think of that person's iconing, so they were at 100%, pretty much. And then they're pulling in an extra $120,000. That's a pretty cool opportunity.
Well, and what they're doing, so I've been saying this for 4 or 5 years, because if you look at the macro, I think the macro is an example of the micro. So the macro is brokerage. The problem that they're having is that they're having to deal with the following. The net company retained dollar to brokerages has gone down 50% over the last 50 years. So it used to be if a brokerage took in $1, they kept 50 cents. Now it's like 10 cents. That's a huge problem. They're also dealing with a massive decline in revenue when you go from 6 million to 4 million transactions. Plus with the NAR thing, I think with a high degree of probability that there may be some compression in terms of professional fees.
If I were betting, I bet it goes down, not up.
Right, me too. On the buy side. So all of that, what I share with people is, look, cash is oxygen to a business. After the rah-rah and the marketing, Warren Buffett says in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. I think. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. Who's actually making money? So if I look at the macro, it's happening on the micro level too, right? It's the same issue. Now, the way that the macro dealt with it was to become vertically integrated on ancillary services, right? Well, what this platform does, and what I share with agents all the time, it allows me to be vertically integrated, where I get equity in the company that I'm helping to build, right? An S&P 600 company. I also get this other opportunity, which stands next to me, which makes up for any compression in commissions. And that's really what you're saying, right?
And also understanding that like our core business model is profitable and sustainable.
Yeah.
And so we don't actually need to monetize the agents and turn them into a product. Like I keep you on the partner side. And I actually said that to people, I'm like, listen, if an opportunity isn't profitable, meaning like at the unit economic standpoint, they lose money every time they close a transaction.
Yeah.
At some point they will monetize you.
They have to.
Right? Whether it's their ancillary or the model shifts.
Which I'm already seeing, where I was on a call with a brokerage in Chicago, and here's what they said, Leo. If you don't do 10 million in volume, your split's higher. If you don't use our ancillary services, your split's higher. That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Which, again, I'm in the business of partnering with the very biggest producers.
Yeah.
Again, like I know the avatars across our spectrum, but like I'm quite proud that our top 250 teams sold north of 69,000 homes. As a standalone independent company, those top 250 teams would have been the 6th largest independent by transaction count in the United States. Right? And the companies in that ranking are 18, 20,000.
Which I think is great, because one of the things I hear from people is like, oh, you guys just care about like attraction. It's like, nah, dude, we do the most units.
Period. And our per person productivity is on the high side compared to like other national companies. And so what I realized early on when I got here is I'm never going to disproportionately collect ancillary services, because when you're doing business with companies that have 10, 15, $16 million in gross commission income, those are fully integrated companies.
Yeah.
They own their ancillaries.
Yes.
And I need to make sure that my platform allows them to plug and play and support that, right?
Yes.
We want to be able to give you all the legal advice and make sure the ABAs are compliant and that you're staying on the right side of RESP and all the stuff. But like, if I had to figure out how to make us valuable by monetizing you, I would have a hard time attracting the most productive people.
Because it goes back to that principal and agent problem. It would create friction.
Families we deal with, taxes is the single largest expense every single year. 99.5%, about 5,973 pages tell you how to avoid paying taxes.
Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. We have with us a very important person that you're going to want to spend some time with and listen to. He specializes, we were talking about this off camera, in a particular niche, which is tax efficiency. He calls it being tax smart. It is Justin Kramer. He is the president of Harbor Private Wealth. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me on.
100%. Now, I actually had the good fortune of coming in contact with you. I was in Myrtle Beach visiting a buddy of mine, Greg Sisson. He's one of the top agents in the country. And you were doing a talk there, and I got to hear some of the things you were specifically within that niche of tax efficiency teaching the audience. And off camera, we talked about like, okay, well, which I really appreciate. You're like, hey, I want to add value to the audience. So maybe two things we can focus on is how does this matter to me as an agent? Let's say I'm an agent out there that is doing well and notices that once you start to do well and earn a lot of money, a gigantic tax bill comes with that. So you're like, hey man, how can I be efficient with that? And then also how you can, kind of serve high net worth clients. So I guess if you could start off a little bit with how you feel this matters to agents and, them being able to not only earn a lot of money, but retain a lot so that way they can multiply it.
My wife reminds me there's one thing I can do, which is talk. And so I want to make sure we're talking in a specific direction.
Sure.
Are we talking specifically about real estate ownership and investment and the benefits associated? Is that
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then I think it's also too getting clarification around like as a high income earner, why is tax efficiency important? And then from there, perhaps like what you just mentioned, and then from there, something like perhaps like the real estate professional status and things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, let's just start at the top with something that Mark Twain, the famous writer, said. He said, the only difference between the taxidermist and the tax man is at least the taxidermist leaves the skin when he's done. And most of us feel that way, right? When especially if you're a high income earner, chances are you're a business owner or a 1099, and you're paying federal tax, state tax, oftentimes both sides of FICA, which is 15.3%. Your tax bill easily exceeds in most states 45 to 50% if you're a true high income earner, which is crazy to think about. Iceland is a socialist country and they pay 77% tax. We are supposed to be a capitalistic free market society paying north of 50 or 55 and sometimes even higher than that. So our belief and our conversation with clients across the country is in almost every scenario with the types of families we deal with, taxes is the single largest expense every single year. But one of the things that is been super impactful for me is to understand that there really is a different way. That there are lots of things in life we can't control, but there are some things we can control. And then why don't we actually take control of those things? And managing on a year-to-year basis and over a longer period of time through tax smart or tax efficient wealth management and wealth planning, you can actually significantly minimize the amount of money you pay out to Uncle Sam. And so if that money's not going out to the federal government, it's coming back into your own wealth structure. And so I am convinced that not only for most families, high net worth and high income earners is income tax is your single largest liability over your lifetime. It's also your greatest tool for long-term multi-generational wealth building if you understand how to utilize it for your benefit. And one of the things that's really important in this conversation too, Aaron, the general belief is that the wealthiest among us simply play by a different set of rules. And that's just not true. In fact, a constitutional mandate is that if a tax benefit is available for one, it's available for all. But you just have to know what it is. And the tax code right now is nearly 6,000 pages long. And I haven't read every page. I'll just go ahead and confess that. But 99.5%, or about 5,973 pages, tell you how to avoid paying taxes. There's only 27 pages dedicated to raising taxes. So if you can begin, and not you specifically, but if individuals and families and high income earners can begin to adjust their thinking and begin to look at the tax code as a series of incentives that the government gives in order to get you to do what they want you to do, then you begin to say, well, now my goal is to be paired with a competent advisor or a set of competent advisors who can align my interest, goals, and values with the incentives the government is giving to pay the least amount of taxes possible. And it seems kind of overly simple, but nobody does it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's wonderful, man. You do such a good job of articulating it, making it very clear. So I'm taking notes as we're speaking. And you said something which is interesting, is that there's a different way. And what I wrote down right away is, why don't more people take advantage of it? And also what came to mind was perhaps just knowledge and information. So can you talk like a little bit about that? I'm aware that a lot of what you do is teaching, just teaching people what's available.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's a valid point. It's sort of like throughout a typical career where someone might be a high income earner or high net worth individual, they're going to get bits and pieces of, hey, I heard you could do something like this, or hey, isn't there something like that? And so you've got all these things kind of floating around in your brain or in your peripheral vision. But not only is it not clear exactly what to do with those, but here's where it becomes even more unclear. How can you systematically and strategically pair those different benefits together to amplify the value to your personal wealth structure? And that's really what we do. How we say it with our clients is, we're looking to pair and stack deductions and credits that align with your vision and values.
And what you're describing has been very true for me in my experience, because as somebody who, is very focused on income generation, I'm spending 90 to 95% of my time on that particular activity and the skill sets that are required in order to be able to accomplish that. And very little, it's precisely what you're describing. Like, oh yeah, like I heard something like that. Like, is that true? Like, I don't know. And it's not, you're not actually dedicating any time, energy, or effort. And my experience has been, is that you can outgrow information.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, I like that.
So in other words, like, the information I was receiving at one stage at a certain level of income and a certain level of wealth, I realized that I outgrew that information, and it required me to get a higher kind of level of information and to connect with, people like you. So you talk about like pairing and amplifying, pairing and stacking. So within the vein of a high income earner, and let's say some of the folks that are listening to this are real estate agents that are producing income at high levels, what would be some of the, kind of strategies that you can use as far as pairing and stacking? One of the things that I heard you talk about was the real estate professional status, REP. And I think you know a lot about that. So I'm imagining that might be something that you can share as like a tangible, bite that people can take and perhaps do something with.
Imagine that you're on a buffet of tax benefits. And so each individual is going to consume not only different quantities, but different combination of those tax benefits in accordance with their personal interests and, sort of appetites. And so, we talked about this just before we hopped on. There's nearly 500 tax deductions available just for business owners alone. And so it's like, who can sift through all that? And the average individual not only doesn't know that that's there, but they don't even know how to process that information. And so one of the things in any situation is saying, okay, here's who we are, here's where we are, and here's what we want to do. Now, how do we get to the right, plate of food on the buffet, so to speak? And so I think a combination that I see more often than not is that real estate investing and real estate ownership seems to play a critical role in most multi-generational wealth.
What I'm also aware of, though, is if you utilize the services of somebody like yourself, or people that can help you to be tax smart or tax efficient, that supercharges what you're doing. And
Yep.
it'll allow you to get to, if you even have like a freedom number in which like, okay, like I'm like the guy you were mentioning where he wants to make 500,000 in income,
Yeah.
residually. It's like, okay, well, in order to do that, you probably need, not 20 million, probably 10 million at 5%, like invested. So it's like, all right, well, you can do that probably if he earns 2.8, he could save $1 million a year and in 10 years he'll get there. What I'm also aware though, is that if he does this, it'll supercharge and he can get there in half the amount of time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what most people don't realize is if you're a high income earner, you likely already have the tools in play that you need to go where you want to go. But one of the things about high income earners is they're always focused on earning more income. It's just like, you wake up and that's what you think about. And that's why you are where you are. But the downside of that is oftentimes you overlook what's right in front of you that could significantly increase, or I like the term you use, supercharge. So let's look at an example just for conversation purposes. Let's say you earned $1 million a year as an income earner, and it took you X amount of time. What if you could scale back the trade you're making? Because there's trades in life, right? You're trading your time for compensation, right? So that means that you're now not able to do other things because you've made that trade to get to that $1 million of income. What if you could simply scale back and get 35% of your time back, but only make $650, but keep all of it? You just gained 35% and you end up in the same location as if you earned $1 million. And that's real financial freedom, is where you have control over your time and you no longer have to make that barter time for money.
Yeah.
And so it's being more efficient with what you already have. And real estate agents and real estate professionals, those that are involved in what Section 163 of the code defines in real property trade or business, and you have an advantage that the rest of the population doesn't. And here's just the simplest way to explain it. The IRS essentially deems, and I'm oversimplifying here, and just to be clear, I'm not a CPA or a tax attorney. I don't involve myself in giving advice legally or accounting, but we do involve ourselves in all aspects of tax efficient wealth management. And we work in concert with CPAs and tax attorneys to make sure that's done right. So if you are a real estate professional, the IRS views you as A. And then they simply say, if you're not that, you're then B, which is not a real estate professional. So you either are or you aren't. And the implications are tremendous. And just to be clear, I'm not a real estate professional because I can't meet the criteria. So I'm not given this advantage. And a real estate professional, essentially what it allows you to do is to invest in any or all kinds of real estate and get tax deductions against your other income that non-real estate professionals don't get. And why that's important is, let's say that you are a high income earning real estate agent. You could, if done correctly, as a real estate professional, invest in real estate that you have little to no involvement in, that's passive income as long as you meet material participation thresholds and a couple of other things. You could then take the tax deductions, which are tremendous right now, which is some of the stuff we've talked about with bonus depreciation and otherwise. You can take this passive investment and turn part of your real estate agent income into tax-free income. The doctor down the street can't do that. Not that way, at least. Now, he still has the opportunity to do it, but not with all of the opportunities that you would have. So it truly is like you're a unicorn right now if you're a real estate professional.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know if you guys caught what he just said there. It's so powerful that because of what we've chosen to do as a vocation and because of the rules and the way they are now, and we discussed that they're in the process of changing and scaling back and they're subject to kind of government changing rules. But at the moment, the way they sit right now, that you can invest in real estate that is passive in nature, whether that be like a syndication or something of that nature. Or if you invest in an Airbnb and somebody else runs it or whatever the investment vehicle is, and then you can take accelerated depreciation, which you do, which the syndicator would do on your behalf, or You can do a cost segregation analysis. You can get one big depreciation instead of over 27 plus years. And then you can use that to not only write off against the income that the property generates in that calendar year, but also against your earned income. Is that what I understood correctly?
Yeah. I think as a summary, that's accurate. The only thing I would add is there are individual nuances like material participation or other things that you've got to meet.
This unbelievable, free, crazy viral platform that if you just spend some time, energy, and effort on, you can get a lot of attention, and then you can figure out how to make money with that attention.
Around TikTok, there's a lot of agents and brokers are scared to start using it because they're just caught up in their own head.
Known is better than best.